Today I'll be creating my virtual network. In my last video I created a resource group. So the first thing I will do is to go to the virtual network here. I could click on this, or I could just go to the search button and type virtual network. I'll click on this. Okay, so these are some of the virtual network I've created. So I'm going to be creating a new one here. What I will do is to go here, I'll click on create. So a virtual network has to be created under a resource group. So I'll click on this drop down arrow, and I have different, these are the resource groups I've created. So I'm going to be creating my virtual network under the demo resource group 3, and the resource group has to be under subscription, but this is the only subscription available here, so I'll still be going with this particular subscription. So I'm going to name my virtual network. I'll say VNet 3. I'll call it VNet 3, and then I'll go to our region. Our region is South Africa. This is the region I created my resource group. So I'll still be using this region, this South Africa region. So I won't be changing it. I'll still be making use of the South African region. So the next thing I'll do is to click on next, which is security. It takes me to security. You see here, these are the options I have. I have basic security, IP addresses. These are the things I'm going to be creating before I'll finally click on review and create, and then my VNet will be created. So I'll be checking this box, virtual network encryption. I'll only be checking this box. I also have Azure Bastion, but I will not be checking the box. I also have Azure Firewall, and then I have the distributive denial of service, which is DDoS. I won't be checking these boxes. The only box I checked is for the encryption, the VNet encryption. And then I'll click on next. You see, under next, I have, these are my subnet. This is the subnet by default. I already have this by default. So I think the only thing I'm going to be doing is I'll be changing the IP address. I wouldn't want to use this. So I'll use this particular IP address. And then I'll also change the name. It says the name of my subnet is default, but no, I won't be using that. So what I'll do is to change the name, and I'll what do we call it? Okay, I'll say front end 3. Yeah, I'll name it front end 3, and then I'll click on save. I've saved the first subnet. I'll also create another subnet. I'll click here, add a subnet, click on it. You see, it's changing the subnet, the IP address. I mean, the IP addresses are being changed. So I'm going to be, I'll call this back and 3. Yes, and I'll click. You see the starting address. You see it has here 172.31.1.0. You see that the third octet has been changed. It automatically changes on its own. Here the third octet we have 0, and here we have 1. So I'll click on add, and then I'll be creating the final subnet. I'll click on add subnet, and I'll be naming it. I'll call it database. Yeah, I'll say database subnet 3. You see our third octet here. You see we have 2. The third octet has been changed to 2. So these are my subnets, front end subnet, back end subnet, and then I'll have my database subnet. And then when you look at all the IP addresses, 172.31.0.1, when here we have 172.31.1.0, you see that the third octet has changed. I know the third octet identifies the device, while the first 3 members are used to identify the network segments, the 1, 2, 3. The 3 numbers are used to identify the network segments. So what I'll be doing is to click on next. So my IP address is, my subnet has been created, and then tags. Do I have anyone to tag? No, I don't have name, value. I wouldn't be tagging anybody. So what I will do too is to click on next, which is review and create. Is running a validation at the moment. So let's see if I'm going to pass. Okay, here it says our under basics we have our subscription, which is as a subscription one. The resource group, the name of the resource group which I created my virtual network is called demo resource group 3, and then vnet 3 is the name of my virtual network, and then the region which this virtual network is created is South Africa North. This under security, remember I told you that the only security I checked, the only was the encryption, the virtual network encryption. Why I disabled others, I didn't check the boxes for the bastion, the firewall, and the distributive denial of service. So our IP addresses, this is our subnets. This is our IP, my IP address 172.31.0.0. And then subnets, these are my front end subnets, back end subnet, that's database subnets, and these are my IP addresses. And then I'll finally click on create. So initializing deployment. Let's say it's submitting the deployment. And yeah, our virtual network has been curated. Okay, so the deployment is in progress. Let's see if we're going to have a successful one. Azure subscription one, the resource group, which must be under a subscription. Our deployment has succeeded. It says here deployment VNet 3 to resource group was successful. So I'm going to go to resource. So our VNet has successfully been created. So in our next video, I'm going to be creating a network or NSG.